I'm Alex, 28, and I've always considered myself a rational person, grounded in logic and verifiable facts. That conviction was severely tested one late autumn night as I navigated the winding, fog-choked roads of southern Appalachia. I was on my way back from a remote photography assignment, the kind that takes you deep into places where cell service dies and streetlights are a forgotten luxury. The fog was thick, clinging to the ancient trees like a shroud, reducing visibility to mere yards. Suddenly, through the swirling mist, a figure emerged on the shoulder of the road, an old woman, impossibly frail, standing by herself in the middle of nowhere, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes piercing even in the gloom. She wore a faded homespun dress and clutched a worn shawl around her shoulders. My first instinct was concern, then a prickle of unease. Who would be out here at this hour in this weather? I slowed down, rolling down my window. "Evening, ma'am," I offered, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. She leaned in, her breath smelling faintly of damp earth and something else, something acrid. Her voice was a raspy whisper, barely audible above the idling engine. "Don't follow the lights, child. They lead to sorrow." She pointed a gnarled finger vaguely ahead, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond me, on the road I was about to travel. "The lights, they call to you, but they ain't what they seem." Before I could ask for clarification or offer her a ride, she simply turned and vanished into the fog as quickly as she had appeared, leaving me with a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I shook my head, dismissing it as an elderly woman's ramblings, perhaps disoriented. I continued on, the encounter unsettling, but quickly pushed to the back of my mind. About 20 minutes later, the fog seemed to thicken even further, becoming an impenetrable wall. My headlights struggled to cut through it, just as a wave of doubt began to creep in, wondering if I should pull over and wait it out. I saw them, two faint, reddish lights in the distance, shimmering through the mist. They looked like taillights, moving slowly, steadily, just ahead. A sense of relief washed over me. Finally, another vehicle. I could follow them, use them as a guide through this oppressive fog. I eased off the brake, allowing my car to drift closer, maintaining a safe distance. The lights seemed to beckon, a promise of safe passage. We drove like that for what felt like an eternity, the only sounds the hum of my engine and the whisper of the fog against the windows. The road began to descend sharply, curving around what felt like an endless series of hairpin turns. I trusted the lights, assuming they belonged to a local who knew these treacherous roads. Then, the lights ahead of me suddenly veered sharply to the right, disappearing into what looked like an impossible, sheer drop. My heart leaped into my throat. I slammed on the brakes, tires screeching on the damp asphalt, the car skidding violently. I fought the wheel, narrowly avoiding following them. My headlights, now cutting through the fog more effectively as I slowed, illuminated the scene before me. There was no road there, only a gaping chasm where the bridge should have been. The old bridge had collapsed years ago, a local landmark of tragedy. My car teetered on the very edge, the precipice, a terrifying void. As I stared, trembling, into the abyss, I saw them again, far below, the two reddish lights, now stationary, resting at the bottom of the ravine, eerily still. And then, for a fleeting moment, illuminated by the faint glow of those distant lights, I saw a familiar, frail figure standing beside them, looking up at me. The old woman. Her face was no longer just wrinkled. It was skeletal, her eyes hollow, and a silent, knowing sorrow etched into her spectral features. She wasn't warning me about the lights. She was one of them, a lost soul, forever replaying her final fatal journey, her only solace in trying to prevent others from joining her in the darkness. I had almost become another one of the lights. My name is Sarah, 32, and I never believed in local legends until that night. I was driving through a particularly isolated stretch of the Appalachian Mountains, heading to a friend's cabin. The sun had long set, and the darkness was absolute, broken only by my headlights carving a tunnel through the ancient trees. The air was heavy, humid, and the silence outside the car was unnerving, punctuated only by the distant calls of unseen nocturnal creatures. About an hour into the journey, my phone, which had already lost signal miles back, suddenly went completely dead. The car's dashboard lights flickered erratically for a moment, then stabilized. A minor glitch, I told myself, but it added to the growing sense of unease. Then I started hearing it, not from the radio, which was off, but from outside. A low, guttural growl, followed by a series of sharp, almost mechanical clicks. It sounded unnatural, like nothing I had ever heard in the wild. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, perhaps a bear or a coyote, but the sounds were too strange, too rhythmic. Then I saw movement in my peripheral vision, just beyond the reach of my headlights. Something tall, dark, and impossibly thin seemed to dart between the trees, moving with a speed that defied logic. My heart hammered against my ribs. I sped up, my tires kicking up gravel. The sounds intensified, now seeming to come from both sides of the road, closer. I risked a glance in my rearview mirror. Nothing. But then, a flash of red, like two burning embers, appeared in the darkness behind me, gaining rapidly. It was huge, towering, and moved with an unsettling, jerky gait. It was definitely not an animal I recognized. Fear, raw and primal, seized me. This was it. This was the creature from the old tales, the one they whispered about in hushed tones around campfires. I floored the accelerator, the old sedan protesting but surging forward. The creature, whatever it was, kept pace, its movements strangely fluid despite its apparent size. Its red eyes seemed to bore into me, even through the rear window. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I was trapped miles from anywhere with no way to call for help. Just as I thought it would overtake me, the creature suddenly let out a piercing shriek, a sound that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the night. It wasn't a sound of aggression, but of warning. And then it veered off the road, crashing through the underbrush with surprising force, disappearing into the dense forest. I kept driving, my hands shaking, not daring to look back until I saw the first distant lights of a small town. I pulled into the first gas station, my body trembling, adrenaline coursing through me. I recounted my terrifying experience to the elderly attendant, expecting skepticism, perhaps even ridicule. Instead, his eyes widened and he nodded slowly. "The Wendigo," he murmured, his voice low. "Or what folks around here call it. Been seen for generations." "It chased me," I whispered, still shaken. "It wanted to get me." He shook his head. "No, child, not always. Sometimes it guides, keeps the lost from something worse." He then pointed to a faded, hand-drawn map tacked to the wall behind the counter, highlighting a section of the road I had just traveled. "See this here? Old logging trail. Folks used to get lost down there. Some never came back. Not the Wendigo's doing, mind you. Something else. Something human. They say the creature, it sometimes appears to scare folks away from that path, towards the main road." My blood ran cold. I remembered the sudden, sharp shriek, the way it had veered off, seemingly pushing me forward. I had been so consumed by terror, I hadn't noticed the faint, barely visible turnoff for a narrow, overgrown dirt track that branched off just before the creature had disappeared. A track that, in my panicked state, I might have easily mistaken for the main road in the dark. The creature hadn't been hunting me. It had been protecting me from a far more insidious evil lurking in the shadows, an evil that preyed on lost travelers. The forest's monster had been my unlikely guardian. I'm David, 45, a seasoned trucker with over 2 decades of hauling freight across this country. I thought I'd seen it all: blizzards, black ice, rogue deer, even the occasional UFO sighting that turned out to be a drone. But nothing prepared me for the night I spent on that particular stretch of Appalachian highway, a road I'd driven countless times. It was a clear, moonless night, the kind where the stars blazed like diamonds in the inky sky. I was making good time, just a few hours from my destination, when, without warning, my rig sputtered, coughed, and died. No warning lights, no strange noises, just silence. I coasted to a stop on the shoulder, the massive truck a silent behemoth under the vast, indifferent sky. I tried the ignition again. Nothing. I checked the fuel, the battery, the fuses. Everything seemed fine. This was inexplicable. I grabbed my toolkit, figuring it was a minor electrical issue. As I worked, a profound stillness settled over the area. No crickets, no distant animal calls, just the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. It was unnerving. I spent an hour under the hood, flashlight clenched in my teeth, trying every trick in the book. Nothing worked. Frustration gnawed at me. I tried my CB radio, then my satellite phone. Both dead. No signal whatsoever. This was truly the middle of nowhere. As the hours dragged on, a strange feeling began to creep over me. A sense of profound isolation, as if the world had forgotten this stretch of road. I started hearing things, faint whispers carried on the wind, just at the edge of hearing, too indistinct to make out words. Then a distinct chill, despite the warm night, seemed to emanate from the trees. I saw fleeting shadows in my peripheral vision, just beyond the reach of my truck's dim parking lights, moving with a speed that made no sense. I decided to try walking. Maybe there was a house, a small town, anything, just a few miles down the road. I grabbed my emergency kit and started walking, the silence amplifying every crunch of gravel under my boots. I walked for what felt like an hour, then 2. The road stretched endlessly before me. The same trees, the same curves, illuminated by my flashlight. There was no sign of civilization, no distant glow of lights. It was as if the road itself had become infinite. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at me. I turned back, figuring I'd been walking in the wrong direction. I walked back, retracing my steps, but still, nothing. The truck should have been visible by now. It wasn't. It was like it had vanished. I walked faster, then broke into a desperate jog, my breath ragged in the still night. Suddenly, I saw it. My truck, parked on the shoulder exactly where I had left it. A wave of relief, so potent it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. I must have been disoriented by the dark and the stress. I rushed back, climbed into the cab, and without even thinking, turned the key. The engine roared to life instantly, purring as if nothing had ever been wrong. I stared at the dashboard, then at my hands, shaking. It had been hours. I had walked for miles. The truck had been dead. Now it was fine. I put it in gear and pulled back onto the highway, my mind reeling. I drove for another 2 hours, finally seeing the familiar glow of a town in the distance. I pulled into a diner, needing coffee and a moment to process. As I sat there sipping my coffee, I noticed the local newspaper on the counter. The date on the front page was yesterday's. Odd. I picked it up, and my eyes fell on a small article on page 3. Local man missing after truck breakdown on Old Highway 17. My blood ran cold. The article described a trucker, David Miller, 45, whose rig had broken down on a remote stretch of Highway 17, the very road I had just been on. He had been reported missing 2 days ago. The truck was found abandoned.